So this session will be chaired by Professor Swaminathan. He is already here. And we have 4 speakers. May I invite Mr. Eric Kenefick. He is the country director of the UN World Food Programme. Mr. Eric Kenefick, please come to the stage. We have the next speaker, Dr. Siebe Schuur. He is the agricultural counsellor accredited to India and Sri Lanka from the Embassy of Kingdom of Netherlands. Dr. Siebe Schuur.
Hello.
And we have Ambassador Kenneth Quinn already here, and Dr. Kundhavi Kadiresan also here. So let me have some brief introduction about each speaker. Mr. As I introduced to you, Eric is the Deputy Country Director. In fact, his expertise is in public health and tropical medicine, and with WFP since 1998. So, Dr. Eric, we are very happy to have you here. And we have Siebe Schuur, and he was the head of the Economic Department of Netherlands Permanent Representation to the European Union, and now he is in New Delhi. Ambassador Kenneth Quinn doesn't need much introduction. He has already been introduced. Madam Kundhavi Kadiresan, she is the Assistant Director General of FAO's Regional Representative for Asia and the Pacific region. And we are very happy to have all of you here. I request Professor Swaminathan to chair this session and start with a few remarks.
We can't think of better speakers than what we have here. And I want to straight away give the floor to Dr. Anil Kumar, who will then organize the discussion. Because I think it's important in these areas, after 30 years, what have we done well, where have we gone wrong, why are some of our aims not fulfilled. For example, we have been wanting all the time to shift to nutrition security. What is the problem? How can we manage? So I think it's a very important session. I'm glad so many of you are here. May I request Dr. Anil Kumar now?
We will straight away go to Mr. Eric.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning. Esteemed colleagues and friends and Professor Swaminathan, it is indeed an honor for me to be here with you today to mark the 30th anniversary of the MS Swaminathan Research Foundation. It's an incredible honor to be in the presence of Professor Swaminathan, knowing his life-changing contributions, ending hunger and malnutrition, not only in India, but across the world. His vision continues to be carried out in the country and his commitment being sustained through this foundation. I would like to congratulate the foundation and all of its members and partners. These 30 years have marked a journey of many innovations, successful projects, and learnings, coupled with the challenging work with the tribal communities as well as path-breaking research. The chronicle of India's commitment to hunger and malnutrition-free India is becoming complex, with the dual burden of malnutrition, increased climate risks, and extreme events, and growing population pressure on the limited natural resources. The Sustainable Development Goals are ambitious, time-bound, and inclusive, and underscore that the achievements are to be realized in our lifetimes in a sustainable way. The most vulnerable need to be reaching furthest first, which resonates with MSSRF's motto of reaching the unreached. The SDGs are interconnected, and thus there's a need for all stakeholders to work together towards their achievement, including the governments, civil societies, communities, bilateral and multilateral agencies, and the UN. The United Nations World Food Programme has been working in India for more than 50 years, supporting the government towards achieving food and nutrition security for the people of India. Through the years, the role of WFP evolved from delivering food assistance to meet the needs of the vulnerable people, to our current role, which focuses on providing technical assistance to the government to help achieve its targets under SDG 2, ending hunger. WFP's association with MSSRF dates back to 2000, when the first edition of the India Food Security Atlas was published. The collaboration resulted in providing a framework for assessing food security in India. Through our collaboration, 3 more food security atlases were produced which focused on rural, urban, and sustainable food security themes. The then Prime Minister, Mr. A.B. Vajpayee, talked about converting the goal of a hunger-free India from vision to reality. The partnership with MSSRF benefited in bringing the issue of food and nutrition security in the national debate and provoking action. WFP later collaborated with the Resource Center in the MSSRF to undertake some research, including the use of community grain banks to mitigate climate and disaster risk. Further updates of the atlases were then produced. The collaborative analytical work has paved the way for institutionalizing an analysis framework within the country. The organization of multi-stakeholder consultation on achieving sustainable development goals and strengthening the science of climate change is extremely opportune, especially when the localization of SDGs is being done across the country. The 3 technical sessions cover quite a lot of ground of the whole spectrum in the space of food and nutrition security, climate resilience, and biodiversity. Some of the more cross-cutting themes, such as gender equality, disabilities, and livelihoods, are also important. I'm sure you will find some space in the overall discussions for these issues. In the spirit of One UN, multiple agencies, including our partners from FAO and IFAD who are present here, are working together to support the government to achieve food and nutrition security targets by 2030. On behalf of WFP and our partners, I would like to thank the MSSRF for organizing the consultation and wish the best for rich deliberations, contemplations, and hope that in the end a concrete roadmap is available to take forward for the 2030 agenda. Thank you.
Now I invite Dr. Siebe Schuur.
Good morning. I'm afraid that I put too much text on this one sheet, so I apologize for the people in the back. And maybe the picture is a little bit too big. The picture is of Mr. Simon Groot. He is the recipient, or is going to be the recipient, of the World Food Prize 2019, which will be handed over to him, I'm sure in the presence of Ambassador Kenneth Quinn, in October in the US. And why do I put his picture on it? First, because the first recipient of the World Food Prize was our distinguished host of today, Professor Swaminathan. And secondly, in those years since then, next to Professor Swaminathan, 6 Indian nationals have received the World Food Prize. So I kindly ask you, I think, couldn't do Indian science in this field be a little bit less humble? It's not in your nature, I know this, but a little bit less humble and more outward speaking and challenge the world on the accomplishments of Indian agro-science. I think that is something that has to be recommended. Now, I put a number of things here on the sheet because some of you, maybe most of you, may know that Netherlands is a small country, but we are quite strong in agriculture. We are, after the US, the second largest agriculture exporter in the world in value. It's just about quality. But if you think that we are complacent about this, I have to disappoint you. We are not complacent, and we are a little bit worried. We have last year launched, we is the Dutch government, and in particular our Minister of Agriculture, Nature and Food Quality, have launched a new policy that is gearing towards what she calls circular agriculture. Circular agriculture sounds very fashionable, but it in practice means that if you can have your circular agricultural change short, if possible, should do so. If they have to be, by necessity, longer, then you should do so as well. And why is this? Because in the Netherlands, we have concluded that the intensive way of doing agriculture, husbandry, whatsoever, is not sustainable. We have to move to another system where we are also struggling with climate change. You may have seen the pictures of hottest summer all over Europe. That means that we will see in the south of Europe in particular a totally different system with much hotter and higher temperatures. The good thing is, for instance, we might finally be able to produce some really nice wines in the Netherlands, because as we speak, it still has to be something to be, let's say, added to that. But it is a big challenge that we're in the Netherlands. We have to look more to biodiversity. We have to look more to all kind of issues that have to do with, I put here, food security. But of course, in our country, food waste is the biggest issue, not food loss at the beginning of the chain, but food waste. Every Dutch, on an annual basis, wastes 41 kilos of food. In total, there is more than 700,000 tons only in my small country. So we really have to change this. Now, to end, we are very happy to work together with many institutions. Of course, with the MSSRF Foundation, but also with many others in India. We will have a state visit coming up in October, where our King and Queen will come, and it will be together with the annual tax summit that India will organize with a partner country. And this year, Netherlands is fortunate to be partner country of India. The topic will be the interrelationship between agriculture, water, and health, and how technology and innovation can produce better results. So I hope to see some of you at the Tech Summit on 15 and 16 of October. I would very much like to thank the MSSRF Foundation for all the work it has done. I would like to say a special word to you, Dr. Swaminathan, of thanks of your old friend, Professor Rudy Rabbinge. When they were together last year in Delhi on the dais, receiving for Professor Swaminathan the World Agricultural Prize, there were 180 years on the dais between the two of them. Now, of course, compared to Dr. Swaminathan, Dr. Rabbinge is still a youngster of about 85. Thank you very much.
Now I invite Ambassador Kenneth Quinn.
So nice to be here with all of you. I was here about 9 or 10 years ago when you had a conference on biodiversity right after Norman Borlaug passed away. And it was like the third day of the BT brinjal controversy, and State Minister Ramesh was here on the stage, and I was getting set to speak, and about 100 members of the press just ran up on the stage. So I was here speaking, and they were all there interviewing Minister Ramesh. So it doesn't look like that's going to happen this time, but not. So I'm president of the World Food Prize. I was an American. I'm not from agriculture. I was American diplomat when I retired after being ambassador to Cambodia, and I became president of the World Food Prize in Des Moines, Iowa. And for the last 20 years, I've been endeavoring to fulfill Norman Borlaug's vision to make it come to be seen as the Nobel Prize for Food and Agriculture. But the great experience I've had was, one, working with Norman Borlaug, and two, getting to know and work with Dr. M.S. Swaminathan. What a privilege that has been in my life. Now, there's a lot of debate about where did the Green Revolution start. Was it in Mexico where Borlaug was working? Was it in India and Pakistan? So I'm going to tell you something now that I don't think anyone here knows, except a few, and of course Dr. Swaminathan, that the Green Revolution started at Renenbaum's drugstore in Madison, Wisconsin in 1953, because Dr. M.S. Swaminathan was on a postdoc at the University of Wisconsin, and Norman Borlaug was invited to come to a conference on genetics. And they got talking to each other and went across the street to Renenbaum's drugstore and had coffee or whatever, and the connection was made. Renenbaum's is gone. There's a brand new building that's part of the state history, and we are putting up a plaque in that building that's going to say, the birthplace of the Green Revolution. And you know, I'm sure Norm was up there in Green Revolution heaven singing happy birthday with us to you, MS Swaminathan. So 10 years later, thanks to UN FAO and making Borlaug a consultant, they brought him from Mexico to India, where the connection was made. Dr. Swaminathan had invited Borlaug to come, didn't have the money, but the UN FAO made it happen. And when the history of the great achievements of the UN, and that includes the World Food Program and refugees and all of those, putting Swaminathan and Borlaug together is going to be high on that list of great things the UN did. So, you know, here they are out in their coats and ties. And of course, that never would last very long. Soon the coats were off, then the sleeves would be rolled up, and they'd be out in the fields there. 20 years after that, Dr. Swaminathan was in the Philippines as Director General of the International Rice Research Institute. And here he is with President Corazon Aquino, who would be, after she left office, a member of the World Food Prize Council of Advisors. And it was there that Erie, Hank Beechel, Gurdav Kush from India, developed IR8 rice and IR36 and other great breakthroughs in the Green Revolution in rice. And it was there that Dr. Swaminathan got the call in 1987 that he would be the first World Food Prize laureate. And here he is with Jim Ferguson, the chairman of General Foods, which was the sponsor, and at the time it was called the General Foods World Food Prize. And the money, of course, went into starting this wonderful center. And there can't have been any better use of World Food Prize money than that $200,000 that got this research institute started. Yes. I wasn't there then. I was in Manila at the same time because I was the deputy U.S. ambassador. And Simon Groot, yeah, I'm sorry I pronounced it, the wrong way, but he told me it was all right himself. I can't, it's so hard to say. So, so the vegetable seed revolution, the rice revolution, and the democracy revolution were all there, all boiling, all swirling in the Philippines in the mid-1980s. It was an amazing time. So much emanated from that atmosphere. So, our prize is now $250,000. That's what Simon Groot will come to our state capital. So it looks like it's the Nobel Prize. It's even, I don't know, maybe there are people here from Norway or Sweden, so I have to be nice and say, but it looks like the Nobel Prize there. I invite all of you to come and join us. But Dr. Swaminathan's played another role at the World Food Prize. He was the chairman of our laureate selection committee. He would be there when Dr. Borlaug could no longer do that, so appropriately stepped in, and under his leadership, we picked African plant scientists, we had U.S. non-NGO leaders, we had presidents of countries, we had breakthrough research scientists. But if I was to pick out one selection, it would be 2012. Here's the Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, comes to Des Moines, and there to join in presenting the World Food Prize to Daniel Hillel, an Israeli Jewish irrigation pioneer who had been nominated by 3 Muslim scientists from 3 Muslim and Arab countries. And there in the audience is Israeli diplomats, Muslim princesses, Princess Haya bint al-Hussein, the daughter of King Hussein, sheikhs from Qatar, and all sorts of other Hindu, Buddhists, Christians, etc. Everybody standing and cheering for this man's achievement. Peace through agriculture. Dr. Swaminathan, you and the Laureate Selection Committee had sent this incredible message to the world. And that is the theme of our symposium this year, peace through agriculture. It's our belief that it's agriculture and confronting hunger can be so powerful in bringing people together. We also have a Global Youth Institute. There, Bien Lee's over here, so she's, I won't say how old you are, Bien, but stand up so people can see you. But when I started, she was 15 years old and in high school, and I sent her to Africa, to Mabita Point, with Isipe, right? Yeah, with Dr. Khan. Yeah, Dr. Khan. And this got her hooked on this. She's now, her life has been directed at confronting hunger. She's doing marvelous things. I think there were maybe 10 or 12, maybe 20 students total that year. Now we have over 200. We have students come from the Netherlands. We got students coming from Africa. We have 10 that come from China. And our laureates go and interact, but none of them attract young people like Dr. Swaminathan. There he is, surrounded by all of these students at our Youth Institute, inspiring the next generation. And then he welcomes every year here, he and his wonderful staff, a Borlaug Ruan intern. So I regularly send 17, 16, 18-year-old students from across the United States here, and they are welcomed and they are inspired in such an amazing way. And then at the end, Dr. Swaminathan and Meena have the student to their home. They have a meal to send them back to the United States. And so the love that you give to our students is so incredible, and the inspiration that they receive. So I want to preserve Dr. Swaminathan's legacy. So I had a painting made of him back around 2003 or 4 by a local artist. I thought it was nice. And but then we got our Norman Borlaug Hall of Laureates. And by the way, I have a 100-year lease. So if I can be helpful the next go-round and that, so there. And but I thought, well, I could do something else to recognize Dr. Swaminathan. So I hope you can see that here, about 20 feet high in the air, is a mosaic of him in our Ruan Laureates room. On this side, the first World Food Prize laureate. On the other, the first woman laureate, who was awarded in my first year, leading the World Food Prize, Dr. Evangelina Villegas from Mexico. So everybody comes in our building will see this. And the man who was designated one of the top 20 top leaders in Asia of the 20th century will, because I have a 100-year lease, in the 22nd century still be inspiring students who come to the World Food Prize Hall of Laureates. There's 200,000 pieces of cut glass that make that up. You should come to our symposium just to see this and that. And even on the cover of his book, 50 Years of the Green Revolution, is that image. We're so proud to have it on there. But I think there can be more things to continue the legacy of Dr. Swaminathan and the Swaminathan family. So I'm very pleased to share with you for the first time that I have extended an invitation to Dr. Madhura Swaminathan to join the World Food Prize Council of Advisors, and she has made my day by accepting. So the first meeting is October 15th in Des Moines, and we look forward to seeing you there. Also, I hope that through the MS Swaminathan Foundation, we could look at building an Indian Youth Institute. I mean, I have students come from China, we have students come from the Netherlands, students are coming from Africa. There should be high school age students coming from India every October to the World Food Prize. So our staff will be in touch with you, and wouldn't it be wonderful? We have MS Swaminathan scholars coming to Iowa, continuing the tradition that you have established. Now, but the moment I remember most about Dr. MS Swaminathan in my last 20 years was 2007 in the U.S. Capitol in the Rotunda when Dr. Borlaug received the Congressional Gold Medal, America's highest civilian honor. And Dr. Swaminathan was invited. Here's the President of the United States, all the congressional leaders, and they're all being nice to each other. It's amazing development. And Dr. Swaminathan gets up and speaks, and he reads a poem at the end of his remarks. And I will indulge you. I just want to read the poem. That it's by Maria Rilke Ranier, and it says, "Again and again in history, some special people wake up. They have no ground in the crowd. They move to broader laws. They carry strange customs with them and demand room for bold and audacious actions. The future speaks ruthlessly through them. They change the world." I know Dr. Borlaug joins with me in saying that those remarks apply to you, Dr. Swaminathan. You have changed the world. And so I extend from all of us, the World Food Prize, our congratulations, the 30th anniversary of MSSRF, and a lifetime of service to humanity.
So thank you, sir. Thank you very much. May I now invite Dr. Kundhavi Kadiresan.
Good morning. Dr. Swaminathan, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a great pleasure for me and an honor to be here today. I'm coming back to my country, I'm coming back to my state, but most especially, I am here joining with very special people to celebrate Dr. Swaminathan's work over the last several decades. So that is indeed, for people like me, it's a very special honor, and even to be sitting with you, Dr. Swaminathan. It's very emotional for me in that sense. I'm also very privileged and thankful to Ambassador Quinn to take us through this historical journey of Dr. Swaminathan. It also allows us to deeply appreciate and understand the work that has gone in. And in some sense, not having been part of the last 30 years, you nicely brought together. I think, Dr. Swaminathan, we may need a special research in terms of technology working for us here, But I want to begin by thank you for this opportunity to participate in the celebration of Dr. Swaminathan's contribution to global food security and public well-being. Among others, his approach calls for ecological sound farming methods, equity in an opportunity, and the sharing of technology and information to improve agriculture and food production. He has shown by example that commitment to overcome obstacles, courage to try new strategies, and a vision of a better world can deliver positive changes. Visionaries like Dr. Swaminathan went far ahead of the curve when he began of speaking about sustainable agriculture. And in some sense, this resilience on climate change and biodiversity, long before they became bywords in the international development community. The 20th century was an era inclined to overexploitation of water, the overuse of pesticides and synthetic fertilizers. Now the world is a better place, or actually, in a way, the better place that we know. We understand better now about how to manage and protect our natural resources. We understand, for example, that the widespread use of chemicals leads to soil degradation and its hazards to human, plant, and animal health. We all know too well the bee story and the loss of pollinators due to pesticides. Dr. Swaminathan's foundation has a pro-poor, pro-women, and pro-nature approach and advocates the use of science to accelerate sustainable agriculture and rural development. And in FAO, we share this approach and these goals. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the slide is a bit ahead of me, so let me go back to the slide that I wanted to show. I want to first, before going into the slides, want to speak to you to some of the challenges facing food and agriculture to feed the rapidly growing global population with nutritious food. The last part of what I just said is critical part. It's not about just providing the food, but the nutrition food. To do so, we have to consider the symbiotic relationship between agriculture, biodiversity, and climate change, a major theme of this consultation. To begin, I want to give you an overview of the global trends that affect agriculture and food security. And what are these global trends? They are the widening income inequalities. Economies are booming, but not everybody is benefiting. Shifting demographics, and what does it mean for agriculture? Farmers are aging. Rising urbanization and changing lifestyles. In terms of food security and nutrition, the world is no longer concerned only with a simple dichotomy of the fed versus the hungry. We are now experiencing a range of different types of malnutrition, from hunger to hidden hunger, which we otherwise call the micronutrient deficiency, to obesity. Obesity is one of the larger things that we are actually talking about in the last 2-3 years. These different types of malnutrition shortens people's lives as well as make them less productive and fulfilling. This slide that I am having on up there is from our recent publication, 2019, State of Food Insecurity in the World, a product that the Rome-based agencies and other 2 UN agencies joined together and put together every year. It actually shows you that close to 820 million people go to bed hungry every day. Now, when we talk about development and impressive growth, we still have people, 820 million, going to bed hungry. If you see the other graph, this is actually the Asia-Pacific region. And if you see over the years, we saw that we were making progress. Undernutrition, or issue relating to malnutrition, the overall issue of malnutrition, we were making progress. It was coming down. Malnutrition was coming down. But if you see in the last 3 years, it's plateaued. We are not making much progress. In some countries, it's actually increasing. So in a sense, the question is, we talk about the SDG 2 being ending hunger. And the story of the last 3 years is not very good. So in that sense, this slide actually gives us a lot more need, urgency to work on this important area. We estimated that 2 billion people are now experiencing moderate or severe food insecurity, and this includes people who do not have regular access to nutritious and sufficient food. We also estimate that 2 billion people in the world are overweight, and for those, more than 670 million adults are obese. So out of the 7.5 billion, we have 2 billion who are undernourished, or there are micronutrient deficiency, and the other 2 billion are obese, and the remaining, you don't know whether they are going to fall into any one of those other groups. So the work before us is rather big. Rapid but unequal economic growth is actually also happening down to the household level. It's an important global trend. Income inequality is rising in nearly half the countries of the world, including several low and middle income countries, which is significant for food security and nutrition. In countries where inequality is greater, economic slowdown and downturns have a disproportionate effect on low-income population who have to use a larger portion of their income to purchase food. And children are often the most adversely affected. We saw this effect in 2018 when economic shocks worsened and the security and prolonged duration of food crisis in 33 countries affecting close to 100 million people. And globally, another significant factor, along with the inequalities, the growing inequalities, is the factor relating to the demographic shift. With the exception of some countries with a youth bulge, the agriculture workforce is aging. In many areas, the average age of the farmer is actually increasing. In Korea, it's actually 70. Average age of a farmer is 70 years old. Kenya, I mean in Africa as a continent, you see that a much more youthful population, but even there, it is 60 years is the average age in Africa, even though 60% of Africa's population is under the age of 24. Youth suffer high unemployment, yet youth are leaving agriculture or not entering agriculture. So in some regions, the migration of rural youth in cities will result in a significant percentage of farms being abandoned. Along with the demographic shift, there is urbanization and lifestyle changes. And there is an outmigration in rural areas to cities. People are living increasingly sedentary lives, and diets are shifting to more high sugar, high fat, fast food or processed food that is cheap, ready to eat, and easy to access. We hear stories in Indonesia, young people or young families cannot afford to have big apartments. These are small apartments, and some of these apartments don't have kitchen anymore. They find that it is much cheaper to eat out street food than even have a bigger apartment and where you don't have time to cook. Even in my own office, I see many of my staff in Thailand, where I'm based right now, if you track a daily habits of a person, they rush out to work. On the way, you're grabbing in the convenience store your breakfast. And your breakfast is often some sugary, sweet stuff, and people are having in their working desk. Most of the eating is happening in the working desk, not during lunch hours and other hours. Throughout the day, you are snacking away. And so when I ask my staff, we are food and agriculture, shouldn't we be eating nutritious? You know, they are actually saying, but food is accessible, food is affordable. And this food that they pick up on the way is actually tasting good. So people feel that this education and awareness needs to actually really build much more understanding what it really means. Because even in our own organization, when we develop these big graphs and everything, we are not being able to get our own staff to be thinking of this indifferently. So to meet this challenge, we must recognize that sustainable agriculture, biodiversity, and climate change are indivisible from each other. And the theme of this consultation is therefore so very appropriate. Climate change is a risk intensifier on agriculture vulnerabilities and on biodiversity. For its part, if agriculture does not use sustainable methods, it contributes to climate change and it degrades biodiversity. business as usual agriculture is one of the leading causes of degraded land. Today, 1/3 of agricultural land is moderately to highly degraded with significant loss of biodiversity. Agriculture accounts for over 1/3 of water consumption, or 2/3 of water consumption worldwide. Countries that now face acute water deficits, India is one among them, will be really exacerbated by this climate change. Agriculture is one of the leading causes also of deforestation. In the year 2015 alone, the world lost an area of forest the size of Madagascar, due mainly to the conversion of forest land for agriculture use. I'm sure this is happening in different parts of India and in all the states that we have in India. And in the face of this deforestation, however, countries are trying to respond with reforestation and afforestation. And globally, reforestation is making progress. And that's the good news. Total forest area is increasing. But we cannot obscure the fact that these planted forests do not, however, have the variety of flora and fauna of natural forests, from the substrata of the soil to the forest canopy. And I really want to emphasize that, because if you look at this chart, and we actually did a recent release of forestry in Asia and Pacific, looking at the state of forestry today and projecting it for the next 20 years. And again, the story was, yes, we are improving in terms of forest cover, but when we look at the quality of the forest, which is the primary forest, they are actually, per capita terms, is very small in Asia Pacific, if you look at that number. So we need to do a lot more work. When we talk about the symbiotic relationship between agriculture and climate change and biodiversity, let's increase the forest cover, quantity. Let's equally protect our existing primary forests. And that's the message we want to put out there. And these planted forests do sequester carbon, but we cannot replace natural forests with plantation and tell ourselves we have solved the problem. We need to protect the natural forests that harbor real biodiversity. Now, protecting natural ecosystems and farming sustainability will provide the necessary management of global biological biodiversity. And I don't need to say much on this to this audience because most of you understand this. But to shift our food systems to recognize the nexus of agriculture, climate change, and biodiversity is a formidable challenge. It's an understatement if you ask me. However, it's not an insurmountable one. As I mentioned earlier, I see two drivers of transformation. And some of the work that the MSSRF is doing in this area is largely relating to what I'm going to be speaking about. Science, technology, and innovation. That is an important element that we need to be paying attention on. Second, synergies for benefits and efficiency from partnerships and investment. Now, science and technology form part of life on the farm now. And again, this is a slide I would actually like to show it to you. This has become much more mainstream. We actually talk about drones assessing damage after a flood. Actually, in one of my recent visits to Philippines, you have young people using local ingredients to put together drones. This is not just imported or using all equipment from outside. This is homegrown elements, young people putting those drones. And as you know, Philippines is one of the most vulnerable when it comes to climate impact, natural disasters. And these young people are now playing a big role in terms of damage assessment after a flood, and in terms of delivering insurance claims, or map the soil nutrition status of a field, which allows for more targeted and effective nutrition management practices. When we talk about technology, we talk a lot about the crop varieties and vaccines for livestock production. Blockchain technology, even in FAO's own work, we are now increasingly using that. More recently in Papua New Guinea, we have small farmer groups using the pigs having these yellow studs. It traces the food, the health, all elements of small farmers' poultry or piggery that allows us to track our traceability, and that also allows them to make a premium price when they are able to use these kind of technology. Laser levelers are improving cropping. On-farm sensors enable real-time management of crops and livestock systems and monitor environmental conditions such as soil moisture, allowing for more efficient water use. And this is something that we really need to do more. And digital monitoring of the weather provides early warning services that are important resilient boosting tools. Every time I travel to the countries in the Asia-Pacific room, the demand with respect to digital monitoring of the weather is something that all countries are asking for. Technology is also increasingly in the hands of the farmers in the field and the fishers on the vessels. However, is it in everybody's hands, including women and youth? And that's an increasing question that we have to ask. If I go to Nepal, and most of the farmers are actually women, 75% more without migration of men, either going outside of Nepal or to the urban areas, women are left to do most of the agriculture. And if we don't have the technology, the machinery, the access to credit and financing, then of course they will be locked up in this standard practice of low-value production. So in that sense, the innovation aspect for women and young people need to be looked at. Our government policies and budget allocation supporting the implementation of science, technology, and innovation to be actionable for women and youth. Now, when we also talk about innovation, it also doesn't mean it always has to involve some new machinery and new gadgets or digital application. Innovation also always involves a change in our way of thinking. Sometimes innovation involves a return to old ways. Intercropping, crop rotation, integrated pest management, zero tillage, low tillage, all these are innovation. These are something that we need to go back to in a much more serious way. So in that sense, I would like to sort of give this particular slide, which actually brings a farmer, your average farmer's life. You have he sells the tamarind from the trees, he weaves the cells and mats, he sells goats, and all these are what we are talking about a farmer. Risk mitigation measures, and also enabling to increase their livelihood. When we talk about innovation, our way of thinking should be how do we address the issues that they are faced with. Now, when we talk about all these aspects, we also need to be looking at, are we going back to also consuming a variety of crops, particularly beyond rice in a region like this? And that's why the millet, sorghum, pulses, which we call as the future smart food, are we adopting this as part of our overall diets. Now, this also is innovation in terms of our own behavior and eating habits. Now, in order to see the magnitude of what we are discussing, let us just put it in monetary terms. SDGs alone will cost 11.5 trillion per year, and SDG 1 alone, 1.4 trillion. Now, to get that kind of investment, we also need to look at innovative way of financing, not just through our own donors and government financing, but also accessing private sector. And I thought this slide is in that set very interesting, where more and more countries are looking at green bonds, SDG bonds, leveraging private sector money in terms of trying to increase our investment in the area of in terms of improving green financing. Now, money is necessary, but not a sufficient condition alone for reaching these SDG targets. And that's why I want to emphasize the importance of partnerships and working together. One of the many things that we need to look at is how do we complement government, private sector, civil societies, UN agencies, bilaterals. And one of the many strong points of the SDGs is that it facilitates partnership by providing a clear and globally acceptable framework. And this is not only that, but also measuring progress. And I hope we can embrace that and really work towards that. I also want to end, however, it looks a bit too challenging and ambitious in terms of our work. There is already some positive move in the right direction. There is a shift happening in the thinking and the debate of what we want the world to look like in 2030 at the local, regional, national, and global levels. The thinking is now going beyond the GDP as the ultimate indicator of well-being. Robert Kennedy said many years ago that a country's GDP measures everything except what makes life worthwhile. Now we are starting to recognize a range of qualitative as well as quantitative indicators related to work, household work, natural resources, psychological well-being, community vitality, the time use, the social protection, the health of the environment, and the quality of the life. So overall, we need to sort of give emphasis with respect to the other qualitative aspect of it. And towards that, we see the genuine progress indication, which is now looking at all aspects of the quality of life. We all have heard about the famous Gross National Happiness Index of Bhutan, and still another is the measure of Australia's measures of Australia's progress. So let's take this new thinking and the move towards 2030 in a new way. Ladies and gentlemen, I heard Ambassador Quinn talk about the drugstore which started this green revolution. I hope that today is another big stepping stone in terms of looking at the synergy and the symbiotic relationship between sustainable agriculture and climate agenda, as well as biodiversity, which is the theme of this event. Only by working together will it be possible to achieve the SDGs. FAO shares Dr. Swaminathan's vision of a world with adequate and nutritious food that is grown sustainably and distributed along a food system that provide a fair and decent livelihood for the farmer. We are glad to join hands with the Swaminathan Foundation and move towards a healthier, more equitable, sustainable, and climate resilient future. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kundhavi Kadiresan. Now we will listen to Professor Swaminathan. After that, we would like to get released a few of our publications, so taking the advantage of this August gathering. Now I invite Professor Swaminathan to say a few words.
We have had very, very interesting presentations. I'm sure there must be questions and comments. But let me say one thing. I think all over the world today, the right to food is becoming, a legal right to food is becoming a demand for all population. It is not a gift, it's a right to food. In our own country, we have a legislation which also is based on the right to food principle. There are five areas which require a lot of attention. The first is, I think Kundhavi has pointed out that in spite of all our efforts and all our knowledge, malnutrition and food insecurity still prevail. The first is we take a whole life cycle approach to nutrition security. 1,000 days, or the first 1,000 days of the child's life is extremely crucial, as now everyone realizes. But it is important. In fact, the fact that we should adopt a life cycle approach to food security was proposed from here about 15 years ago at a UN meeting. And it is important to recognize, I'm saying this because increasingly there is a feeling there should be a legal commitment to food security. If that is so, the life cycle approach should not be forgotten. Secondly, in relation to calorie deficiency, which is what was called hunger, calorie deficiency, today there are opportunities to overcome it. In fact, India has gone to the extent of giving legal assurance of 5 kilograms of wheat or rice. But in developing this calorie deficiency control, it is important to look at not only wheat and rice, but also a whole series of other millets and tubers and so on. Millets are very important. Now people recognize this because they are both quantity and quality. They provide a lot of opportunity. You'll see outside here, there are a lot of millets which are cultivated by farmers. They were all dying crops, but gradually it was markets were produced. Unless there is commercialization, the conservation will be difficult. In such cases, it is important to have a market, and so the calorie deficiency should be looked at in a much broader way. The third is protein hunger, which was formerly very important. But here again, in our country, apart from milk or animal products, pulses have also been considered traditionally as the one providing the protein. But pulse production went down. But in the International Year of the Pulses, thanks to a lot of pressure, the government increased the procurement price of pulses. There is no proper procurement price. Procurement and public distribution are important. Even in calorie deficiency, the public distribution should include not only wheat and rice, but other crops as well. Karnataka has done it in terms of introducing ragi in the public distribution system. So you have here the problem of hidden hunger, which is one of the most prominent causes of malnutrition. Hidden hunger, mainly micronutrient deficiencies of various kinds. There were a lot of suggestions how to overcome hidden hunger, including fortification, chemical fortification. But now biofortification has become the most preferred issue. If you go next garden here, you'll find a biofortification garden where plants which can provide you vitamin A or vitamin B, C, all of them are shown. You grow those crops which are rich in particular micronutrients. In fact, you remember, Ken, that one of the World Food Prizes was given recently for biofortification of sweet potato. Sweet potato inherently has got a high vitamin A, but this variety is developed. That lady had come here, one of the World Food Prize laureates, who developed this very high vitamin A sweet potato. And then finally, a lot of problems with food security comes from food safety. Food safety, I know FAO has been trying to promote food safety. Aflatoxins and mycotoxins. Mycotoxins, because farmers are not able to dry the crop well, unless it's going to have a lot of moisture, the crop, that gets infected with aflatoxins, mycotoxins. So I think if you want to develop a food security zone or an area, one has to look at all these aspects, look at the life cycle approach, look at the calorie providers, can we widen the providers, look at the protein hunger problem, how to increase the production and consumption of pulses, then how do you really go into the micronutrients or the hidden hunger problem, and finally how to put them all together in a package at the home level. Because independently you can look at them from the point of view of sufficiency, but ultimately from the point of view of nutrition security, they should all be, you can't say this house will have protein, this house will be micronutrient. It's important to look at the totality. So I think this is where today there's a great opportunity. I'm quite excited now that we have been talking about food security and nutrition security for a long time. For the first time I see in the world now today, there are opportunities, low-cost opportunities, agriculture-based opportunities to overcome many of these food insufficiency problems. But as been continuously reminded, even this was the breastfeeding week. There's a lot of articles on the importance of breastfeeding. But then how do you enable a woman? What is the time poverty? My wife always calls it time poverty of woman. is never considered in developing these programs and so on. So many programs, everything to be put on the mother, everything to be put on the woman. How do they manage? So I hope at this meeting, before we conclude, we can urge the government. The first bill is there, food security bill, but we can now go into nutrition security and health and promote technologies which are under the control of the farmer, which are under the control of the people, so that they can grow crops which are rich in micronutrients. Thank you very much. I request now Dr. Anil Kumar to say a few words.
So we would like to release 3 publications now. One publication on, Professor now mentioned about our plant genetic resource gardens, the vitamin-rich gardens, nutri-rich gardens. So we request Dr. Kundhavi Kadiresan to release that search for genes. This is about the gardens which we promote. So we have another publication on our plant clinics, which we promote the plant clinics approach, which I mentioned in my opening address. So there is a good publication on plant clinics. I request Dr. Ambassador Kenneth Quinn to release that. So we also trying to bring out the working paper series on the, particularly with reference to these 3 themes which we have been talking. So the working paper series 1, we have brought out a paper on the agrobiodiversity in relation with the climate change. So I request Dr. Schuur to release that working paper. The last one, our success stories, we tried to identify where we made some impacts. So we captured some 30 success stories. So we brought out a small publication, and I request Mr. Eric to release that. Now, we have this consultation has got different events as well. So morning, the Farmers Pavilion, Honorable Chief Minister, he inaugurated. And we have a Science Society Research Innovation Space where we have done our work in the form of posters, electronic posters, which we have arranged in the next room. So we are requesting Dr. Parodaji to inaugurate that space. So maybe he will go there and do that. And we have our, I don't know whether you have noticed it, we have made our walls in a kind of visual posters depicting our journey, 30 years journey. So I'm requesting Dr. Ramasamy to inaugurate that exhibition. And we have a gallery of Professor Swaminathan. And this gallery is, now there is a dedicated room. So we exhibited his certificates and so on. Dr. Quinn will be inaugurating that. So maybe when we break, we will go to the respective places and then we will go for the lunch.